All right. Welcome back to the Daily Traders podcast. This is episode number 40. I am the media guy filling in for the intro as Mark and Jack, your host and co-host, forgot to film an intro this week. But never fear, for I am here to tell you about our guest this week, Nick Massa. In today's episode, you guys are going to learn about Nick's story from ranked D1 college baseball player to his downfall with his UCL, which ultimately led him to the world of social media marketing. Also in this episode, he'll talk about being mentored by Jesse Boyce, Chris McGinnis, and Jerry Morris. These connections from one to the next have given Nick proven networking strategies we cannot wait to share with our audience. Let's get right into it.
So let's start from kind of like your beginnings. So growing up, you were always a baseball kid. You weren't really entrepreneurial in high school, or were you running like any, you hear the classic story of kids who are like flipping iPhones in high school and hustling. Like, was that you, or you kind of just really focused on baseball?
Growing up, it was a lot of baseball. My weekends got filled up with tournaments, played on multiple different teams. And, that was my first dream, was to play at that next level. I always dreamed about playing at college, and then college, would hopefully turn into professional. But that's where all my, gym every day, everything I consumed from social media, and I purposely did this too, where I knew how the algorithm kind of was working and the more advancements it got. So I would center all my searches and everything around baseball. So literally my whole feed, bro, was just straight baseball stuff. And it was everything I consumed. And I didn't really realize what I was doing at the moment, but I kind of was programming my subconscious and, kind of going from there. But yeah, baseball was my life. Eat, sleep, work out every day.
I was going to say, it sounds like that. I mean, we grew up with kids who wanted to become professional athletes, and I think a lot of them don't have a plan B. That's it. Did you have a plan B?
No. I always had the model that, just go all in, plan A. And if I had to redo it, definitely would, think of different outlets and stuff. I'm not completely regretting anything just because of the fact of that being an athlete and, learning and being good at that. It's almost like you're building your own brand, right? It's very similar to social media. And especially now because, athletes' dreams are obviously to play pro and stuff. It's also, to sign contract deals, brands, that's the stuff you really want because that's where the money is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think growing up, I always dabbled in social media and just stuff, but it was never really a focus of mine.
Yeah.
And then, everything started to shift after, getting injuries. Cause I was like, oh, wow, this might not be my journey. This might not be the path I should be going on. So I guess my back was against the wall and I had to go all in on this now. So
we wanted to take a second to thank this week's sponsor of the episode, thedailytraders.com. Now, if you guys are interested in learning how to trade in the stock market and seeing my exact trades, I post my entries, I post my exits, and a lot of people join so they can follow along and essentially copy my moves. So if you're interested, the first link in the description will give you access to the mentorship group. We'll throw a discount code there. And with that said, on with the episode. So you played D1. Want to talk about your injuries and what you overcame? I know for a lot of athletes.
Well, yeah, you went from I kind of reconcile with you because I ski raced at a very high level. I was a step under D1. I quit when I was 16 years old, but I was at the highest level possible. And when you're an athlete, it really does become your identity. So when you're faced with kind of these injuries, it really is an identity crisis. So this is something you said. You said, or you quoted, "I'm a true believer that to find themselves truly, their world has to crumble to pieces before they truly know who they are deep inside. I always knew I wanted to give back to many who have helped me, and I knew I wasn't entirely done with the sports scene." So you had this so it sounds like you kind of had an identity crisis and you were kind of at this rock bottom. You didn't know what to do.
Yeah. So after my first injury, I got UCL reconstruction, Tommy John. And I remember it because it was kind of the first time in my life that I had faced an obstacle. So throughout sports and really growing up, I was in a small pond and I was a big fish.
Mm-hmm.
So once I got to college, that pond kind of opened up a little bit. I had to put my name out there. I had to do well. I had to grow it. So going through all that kind of stuff and never really having adversity. And then, all of a sudden it doesn't gradually happen. You just pop your UCL. I mean, some people maybe, but I just popped it. My UCL popped and I was just oh shit. I don't know if I what to do. right? So I knew I had to get surgeries. You know, I was fortunate enough to work with Dr. Andrews, get the surgery down, went to Pensacola, Florida, got the surgery. I remember like the second day I flew back and my arm was in so much pain, like complete pain. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, like I don't know if I could, like this might not be it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, I started to go really into just focusing on the recovery process. And, you know, throughout that journey, just because I never really had adversity like that, the way mainly that I coped was, you know, through drugs and alcohol, because I didn't really know how to do that stimulus and like have that, because like being an athlete, like the high of playing sports was big. That was every Friday night, you know? So I would look forward to that day, and now that's completely stripped. So I don't know who I am. I don't know really, you know, anything about myself. I don't know what I like besides baseball. It's been all around baseball. So I started just to dabble in, you know, the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was subconsciously and consciously just, I didn't want to feel the way I did. You know, it's because like you get a little hurt, you know what I mean? Guys like start to pick on you, like little things like that. I didn't like that. And I was like, and I came across, you know, drugs and alcohol. I was like, okay, this makes me feel good. I'm going to definitely go this route. And I regret it completely. So I came back from that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a journey and a half because I really, really worked for that. And I remember I came back throwing harder. I think like 92, 93, was playing on all these teams. You know, my name was getting back out there and I really put the work in. And I came off the season and playing in the PGCBL. It was Amsterdam. You know, my stuff was the best it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I go into the season with that, riding off that energy. And I remember I had like this championship game. I just like went off, pitched really good. And then I went into the next season. I had that energy and I really worked hard in the off season. And then that was the year of COVID. So this is the second time that I really, you know, had the experience of something being taken away from me, especially hurt, like, especially when you're working for it. Right. And you're coming back from something you didn't think this would, because this is out of my control,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I didn't really know what to do. I remember that time broke me, like, cause I was like, I don't need, like my season just got canceled. I just got canceled the year before. Like, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that's when everything sped up really, really fast. I think part of me again was a little bit like broken inside just because of the fact of I thought I didn't deserve this, right? I didn't deserve to have a season taken away from me that I worked so hard. And I always believe this too, that, you know, people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 5 years. And I always looked at that 1 year. You know, when I came back, I was like, okay, well, I got to get drafted. I got to do this. Did I make up for the time I wasn't? And I think that really burned me because I have all these expectations that I would play professionally, right? I was talking to people, this and that, and it just got taken away and then I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And then I think a lot of me was just broken from that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I bet. So what ended up happening was you reached out to some kid you knew at your college who was running like some social media game, and what was it? Was it that you saw him on like a yacht or in like with cool cars or like a nice penthouse or something? You're like, oh, dude, this kid knows what's going on, and you just reached out. You're like, I want to make money. Like, how did that work?
I think in college is when I really started. I think it was my 5th year or my senior year, somewhere along that. Originally, Jamel reached out to me, and it was from a page called No Living Dreamers because I was running that. This page has been like going 5-6 years. He was talking about that, and that's when I really started to grow that page. And I always knew Jesse was like on the other side. I know who he worked for and stuff, but there was this kind of like thought, like, I don't know, I knew what he was doing was big, and I didn't really think too much of it, not even like in terms of that, but I guess I was like kind of intimidated because I was like, wow, like he's not gonna have time. Like all these assumptions came in my head, and so I originally started doing stuff with Jamel, and Jamel's part of EDST. You know, I switched over to him and being my manager a little later down the road. I remember every time he posted, he was the first story. Every time he posted, it was the first post on the feed. So like I had to see him, you know, no matter what. He knew the game, like, you know, he kind of understood it. So subconsciously, again, I always talk about this, that it was just programming in my head. He was everywhere. So, and I was like, okay, well, that's something I want to do. I reached out to him and, you know, started working with him, and, you know, I joined their mentorship program a little down the road. And, you know, from there, it's history.
So you talked about several times on like social media and your feed being occupied by like fully baseball or like the social media kind of guru. And it's kind of like in a saying, you are what you eat, in a sense. Like if you eat a bunch of like cake and pastries, you're going to be fat. But if you if you eat and consume a bunch of like, I don't know, whatever type of content it is on social media. So now let's say someone who's like wants to be an entrepreneur or wants to make money, knows that They have bigger ambitions. How important do you think it is, like, curating what you see on social media? Because if if you digest memes all day long, you're not really gaining any value.
Yeah.
Because social media is now it's such a big part of who we are and what we see every day.
Yeah, I mean, I like that point. I like how you brought that up. I definitely think it's, your diet's way more than you can, like, just eating stuff. It's what you consume on social media. It's, what you watch. And this is all playing a factor, and I think that if you're an entrepreneur and you want to, get started, seeing stuff that's negative, following, like, I'm not even saying like bad pages, but like if you're only seeing memes, like you're saying, and you're only seeing that kind of stuff, you're not going to have those big aspirations just because that's not what you're seeing. It's like who you surround yourself with is who you're going to be. I'm a firm believer in that. So if you surround yourself with 5 winners, well, you're going to be the 6th one. And it's not even like that. The algorithm's so smart nowadays that it understands. So like if you start looking up motivational stuff, well, it'll start coming up, So like I think as your focus shifts, so does the algorithm with you. And I think if you're just consuming motivational stuff, like, and you get mentors online, not even people that you talk to, but like, I don't know, like Gary Vee or, these big guys that are doing it and they have done it and have success, that they put so much free game out there that people don't comprehend all the time, or they don't think it's like that serious, but it's like, these guys are transparent. You know what I mean? I don't know to what degree, but they are. So I think if you're sitting here, watching memes all day, you're not really going to gain any information,
So, all right. So, is it fair to say if you want to be a millionaire, first step, if you're absolutely ground zero, unfollow all the IG models, unfollow the meme accounts, and start following some like productive, actual shit on Instagram and TikTok?
Yeah, I would say so. Or just mute them,
Yeah.
Just shift that focus to a certain degree.
To recap for the viewers here, so you were the serious, baseball player playing D1. You got this life-changing injury, and then you found this new direction or meaning in life through social media. Talk about what you're doing now actively on social media, because we haven't covered that for viewers that don't know you.
So I got a couple different, things I do. So more recently, I've been getting into videography work and, content creation for, some celebrities in terms of like the guys from Jackass. So I work with Zach Holmes. I got some stuff lined up with Poopies and all these guys where, I'm going to be helping them build their presence online, but also form their content in a way it's going to grab the person's attention, pique interest. It's going to do all this. And, with their images and stuff like that, I mean, they're really good at that, but this is just another form of way to do it. So I've been working with people like that. In terms of social media marketing, I generally like to work with athletes specifically just because, I understand that. I understand that athletes want to build a brand. I know athletes want to, sign deals. I know athletes want to do that. And they necessarily just don't have the tools to do it. So, I've worked with a guy named Brevin. Brevin Galloway is a player at Clemson. He has done some crazy stuff in the NLI space. He's worked with, top tier brands. I remember he even had this surgery mid-season where like he was talking about it and like, I don't know if he could have afforded the surgery, whatever. And it was pretty much like a ball surgery, like ball torsion or testicular, like whatever it is, torsion. He had to get surgery and he posted something on his social media. He later turned that into like a big brand deal with this underwear company. And he was all over the face of, New York Post and all these companies. So I personally like to work with athletes because now these athletes can make money, like serious money while getting their school paid for. And I think it's a great opportunity for so many people.
Yeah, 100%. So how do you go about like securing these, 5-figure, 6-figure, who knows, maybe 7-figure deals with these celebrities? Like for most people, that just seems incomprehensible how you would even get connected with someone like Jackass. Is that simply just building up a brand, or how are you marketing yourself and getting your offer out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think social media definitely is a perception of reality, right? So when people come across you, they're definitely going to want to, see who follows you. They want to see those numbers, and that's all a perception that you're giving off, right? And I think, working with high level people, you got to think you're already high level, right? So if you treat yourself like that and you act like that, then I think it's a lot easier. But again, it's a game of networking, right? So it wasn't overnight that I just got in touch with the guys from Jackass. I had to kind of build my network. I had to meet certain people. It was, sending out 75 to 50 DMs a day for a year. You know what I mean? And then you work with somebody, you talk to somebody, and then they open a door for you. You never know, and then Once you get with a big person, then the doors really start to open, because it's like now people are seeing you on a level that is huge, because now they're going to validate me and they're going to, reinsure that everything that I've done is, I guess correct.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of
And
like exponential growth. Like you get with bigger and bigger
yeah,
and bigger and bigger people. Sweet. All right. We're going to cut to a quick break, guys.
All right, so we wanted to take a second to thank this week's sponsor, thedailytraders.com. Now, if you guys are interested in learning how to trade in the stock market, I'm actually going to be giving you access to copy my exact trades, as well as 30 plus videos breaking down my entire trading system. So I will put a link in the description below to my mentorship group. If you guys are interested, I'll have a discount code there, which will hopefully help you out. So go ahead, check that out, see if it's something you're interested in. And with that said, let's continue.
Are you comfortable talking about money? I think a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think the business
like-
side of everything you're doing would be really interesting.
So, like, how do you get paid?
I would say through, like, again, EDST is obviously a source of income. I was making significant money off partnerships. Like I partnered with Reprogram, so I've signed deals with them, and non-competes and stuff like this that I get paid per post, and that could range from anywhere to $100 to $1,000, right? So I do that on that side.
Mhm.
And then with these athletes specifically, I help them with their content in forms of ways like editing. But my doors have really opened when I started working with the guys from Jackass, because now I got people hitting me up left and right. I mean, I don't necessarily charge the guys from Jackass. It's like salary and exposure. So it's well worth that.
Sure.
Yeah, just different forms of ways to do that.
Do you want to explain
I
what
don't get
EDST
that,
does?
yeah.
It's been mentioned a lot on the podcast.
Yeah, and
You
I
guys-
feel like as like a viewer, someone listening, they're going to be like, wait, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
Well, EDST is a social media marketing company. So what we do is not necessarily, we give services. So this is anywhere from, more organic likes, more organic people commenting on your stuff, certain stuff like that, to kind of build that perception of reality, right? And that's where the game's all played, right? So people come across your page, right? And, you have 100 followers and you're following 500. Like, no matter if you think like whatever, like people have to consciously take that in, but subconsciously, man, it's like, I already wrote you off. You know what I mean? Even people in my DMs, like I was thinking about this today, actually, like I get so many DMs and I don't know who to like answer, because a lot of them are just like weird stuff, like OnlyFans or whatever. But the first thing I look at is followers. So, and that pretty much just opens the door.
Yeah.
So what we do is necessarily help you do that. And it's not like, I don't want to say fake or anything like that, but it's in terms of just overall perception of reality. So if you had 50,000 like followers, well, people are going to come across your page and validate you. They're more inclined to like follow, because they see you doing something. And then you could turn that 50 into 100K followers,
Yeah.
And that's kind of the game. And you see with these big celebrities who invest, millions of dollars into marketing, where, if you go through their followers, it's not necessarily all these real people. They're active accounts, don't get me wrong, but like Selena Gomez, she has 400 million followers. Like that, to see what that actually look like is insane.
Yeah.
It's a country. It's like,
Yeah.
it's huge.
Yeah. The amount of influence. And I think now like social media as a networking vehicle is the biggest one out there. I mean, the amount of connections that I've made through social media is wild. I'd say more than, 75% of the businesses that I'm involved in is through social media. And because I've focused, and I mean, I'd say 3 or 4 months ago, I made the shift. I was like, all right, I'm really going to start focusing on my personal brand.
Yeah, and the better your personal brand is, it's like more connections, more deals.
I mean, the ability
more
just to DM, like see someone that's doing what you're wanting to do wherever in the world, and just simply DM them and say, hey, I like what you're doing, kind of have a pitch. We've talked about this. Like, what is like the perfect pitch? What is a DM that you would see in your DMs and say, okay, I'm going to answer this?
I think it's not like, you don't want to sell, right? Not originally. Like, so I think a lot of the time is just building relationships, right? So there's different methods that I go about this, but it's literally simple. It's, I'll go through if I see somebody I find of interest, or, I would potentially like to work with in the future, I go across the profile and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to like their last 3 posts, leave a genuine comment related to the post. And especially if I like what they're doing, I'll follow up with that and I'll go through all their stories, every single story, just so they see that I'm viewing it, right? So, and then I'll like drop a fire emoji and stuff like that because I know that those are less dropped. So there's more chances of me being seen, because a lot of people like stuff, but like to leave like one of those emojis, like I know when that happens to mine, I always look at those people, like who's doing that. And then I'll send them a DM like, hey man, I really like what you do. I want to say, just keep going, keep building what you're doing, and good things are coming. And then, I'll bring that into a conversation. And then, you do that 50 to 75 times a day. Those 50 to 75 people later down the road, the chances of them doing something with you are a lot higher because you're building the relationship, I think a lot of distrust is in selling something right away. Because someone tries to sell something to me, I'm just like, I've seen it all. And that's that you're 90% of the problem on social media,
And the funny thing about, if you're consistent with outreaching and making connections, it's just like, you've said this before. What's your like favorite quote? Like one connection.
Oh, like, okay, one connection literally could be worth more than, 4 years in college, $200,000 degree.
I mean, it's kind of, and you're a funny case of it. Like literally this one, Jesse Boyce connection, would you say changed your life?
Yeah.
What were you majoring or what were you studying in college?
I was technically majoring in marketing, but I majored in baseball. That was, so literally everything I did. I didn't even really think about school. I just knew it was a stepping stone. I needed to do it.
Yeah.
And this is not to promote not going to class or anything and stuff like that. But I always knew deep down inside of my head that I was going to be successful in some type of way. Like I understand that failure is not, a bad thing. I've relabeled stuff. I've, figured out how to relabel stuff in my own head where it's like, I see failure as growth. Right. And that's the connection that I make. So I'm not even scared of it. Because I think a lot of people are scared to fail, scared of the opinions of others, And I think that's a big part is where, especially on social media, because your stuff's out there. And people are going to be talking about it. And I don't necessarily even like that, where it's like, say you go out, right, to a bar, you do something, and people are going to go, oh, I saw what you did. You know what I mean? And some people like to make fun of it. Some people don't. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just people, how they understand it. But you're putting yourself in the spotlight and it's out there for people to consume. So I think with the spotlight, comes a level of vulnerability you're willing to give up.
Do you think everyone's cut out to be like an quote unquote influencer? Like some people I know like can't deal with the hate, can't deal with the comments. And for me, it's like, it's funny, going through a couple TikTok comments or whatever, Instagram, that's just part of the job, which I've accepted and I don't care. But I think that would prevent some people to even getting into social media in the first place. Like, what would you say to those people who, want to do it, but are too afraid of the backlash or the hate?
I would say for, the negative comments, because you're going to get them, and you can't hide from that, and but people don't understand too. And the negative comments, like, they can be negative, but they're not necessarily bad because everyone is, we're negative bias. So people are going to draw towards that. Well, if you understand the algorithm, that's better because now people are going to be commenting, liking that. So that's showing that this is relevant. So the negativity brings so much more positivity. But you have to realize, like, people do stuff because of them. You know what I mean? If I feel bad about something and bad about myself, then I'm more, inclined to share that. But if I was coming from a good spot, a perspective of, positivity and stuff, I would never share that.
Yeah. And another thing is like, we'll post a video, get 100,000 views or 800,000 views or 1 million views, whatever. And, there will be like a couple hundred hate comments. But think about like the ratio of like 200 to 800,000 is so large that for all the people that didn't, hate comment might have been like, oh, whatever. But there's a lot of people in there. It's like, oh, I like this, whatever, cool, next.
You just don't comment.
So there's a lot of, but you really do see the hate, and psychologically that's hard. And I remember when we first started this podcast. I mean, we're probably one of like as far as haters go, this podcast definitely gets a lot of rash on TikTok just because we're young, I don't know, entrepreneurs, whatever it may be. It's kind of like there's a bad notation around it. Like this clip will probably get a shit ton of hate comments, ironically. but
I'm expecting it,
Yeah, it's something that it's kind of hard to get over, and everyone has their way of dealing with it. I remember I just stopped looking at comments. Like I would like see it and I'd laugh, but like deep down I'd be like, damn, like this kind of sucks. And I just stopped looking, and that's how I kind of dealt with it.
anyone who wants to get into social media, who has 0 followers right now, who wants to build a presence and build like a personal brand, what's step 1? And then step 2 and 3.
Step 1, I think step 1 is figuring out, who you are and what message you want to spread. Because from the very first post, you're going to be giving up a message. So I think understanding who you are and necessarily what your goals are at first.
Yep.
It doesn't mean your goals can change later down the road. And that's what I'm starting to learn more about is that, my initial goal was just to, get a certain amount of followers or, just make money off social media. Well, now that's changed. Now I look for $1,000, like complete $1,000 partnerships. I look for, 5-figure deals where I can actually, make a living off this. So now my perspective, my goals have shifted. So I think, but what hasn't shifted is, who I think I am. And I honestly impress myself sometimes where it's like, oh my God, like, dude, I can't believe that I made it this far, because this was so out of, like, I thought this was crazy. Like if you were to tell me this even a year ago, but like, that's how crazy it can be. Like 1 year, 6 months of doing this, completely diving in, treating it like a job. And this is not for everybody, but you could be somewhere you had no idea. You meet one person, like you said, it could replace 4 years of education.
Yeah.
Like completely. So I think step 1 would easily be find out who you are, what you want to provide the world. And I think another thing is, you want to give information that's tangible where people can take it and apply it in their lives, especially daily. I think that's a huge one.
Yeah.
I think people, if they can take the content you take and they can instantly apply it into their life, it's way more, easier to comprehend, obviously for them, but they're going to, see if this works or not. So I think obviously providing good information. Step 2, I think, as you build your profile, stuff like that, you obviously want to get your numbers right. You invest in marketing, you invest in a social media manager who understands the numbers of this whole thing. If you're giving out good content and you've got the numbers to back it up, your brand just going to skyrocket way faster than you think. But I think originally it goes into, you have to be willing to invest into yourself. Because if you're not willing to invest into yourself and you want to do this from $0, like God forbid, go do it. But, it's a lot harder and don't expect to grow overnight.
Yeah. What is the timeline,
this
you
process
think?
is,
Like, what's a reasonable expectation to have to say, okay, I have my personal account with like 500 followers and it's all just kids from my high school or college, whatever. What's a reasonable timeline to expect? Okay, maybe I'm making $1,000 a week, just running social media, $1,000 a month even.
might take up to 6 months at least. But I think that if you're providing content in a way and value that's so good, it could be even faster than that. So I don't think there's necessarily like a concrete timetable for anything, but, to build that trust, that, validation, the credibility, I would say at least 6 months to stop,
Yeah.
It's hard though, because it's like there's like you think of kind of a certain angle, a brand angle, a content angle. It's like there's someone else doing that. And so it's essentially like everything's already being done in a way. Well, how are you going to become the best at that? And I think that's what a lot of people, like in the first place, that intimidates them. Whether they have an idea to be like a gym influencer and then look and there's, guys who are,
Infinite gym influencers.
Infinite gym influencers.
Yeah.
It's like how do you even put your foot in the door when there's already people doing that well in essentially every niche there is? And then how do you climb up the ladder in that niche, become the top, or even like get a foot in the door to make some money? Like it's just such a competitive thing. Do you have any like kind of secrets as far as like hacking, social media to, to work up that ladder?
I think, you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. Like content and stuff that works is going to continue to work. But I think what, certain people do is that they share their story. You're getting access to what they've been through, their journey, how they talk, how they, certain stuff like that. So it's almost like you have to embody these principles and values. So I think if you're willing to share that side of you, don't look at, I know for me, big part of me was, my sobriety. I think throughout the journey, like, and all that kind of stuff, I was scared to say it. Well, now it's out there. You know what I mean? I put it out there because I wanted to, it's my story. I want to inspire, you know what I mean? So I think that's a big part of it, is showing, who you are truly. Like, don't think of being someone else. Like, there's already a Gary Vee, right? There's already an influence, like a gym influencer, but the only difference is that there's not you yet. So who are you and what is your message?
I like that. It's kind of like,
that.
you don't want to half-ass social media trying to be someone else. It's like,
Mhm.
be yourself. So, all right. You said these last 6 months have been crazy. You couldn't even imagine where you are now 6 months ago. And then you also talked about how you've been sober for 7 months. So how much of your sobriety do you think has played into your just rapid success in the last 6 months?
I think a lot of it. I give that all testimony to, my higher power and stuff like that. But I think a big part of it was, getting sober, getting a clear mind. Because, when, I was running, I was, drugging and drinking myself. You know what I mean? I didn't really know who I was. I wasn't allowed to find that out. And I was very uncomfortable in my own skin. So in the last 6 months, I did tremendous work on myself. I stopped. I went to, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcohol Anonymous, like all these places where people with similar traumas and stuff like that, they understood what I was saying. It wasn't that this was a moral deficiency or something. I just suffered from a disease of addiction. I've seen how, beside you take away the drugs and alcohol, how that affected my life in different ways. Because when something I like social media, like I do it 110%. Like it's the same thing with baseball. Like I said, I only consume baseball. It was 99 whatever percent. So I think, getting sober, really focusing on myself. Like I always see these posts on my timeline where it's like, go away for 6 months, work on yourself, go to the gym, like you'll become a whole different person. I truly believe that.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So kind of like give us 3 tips to become
give us that
entrepreneur.
Give us that post live. Well, like what are the 3 things you can do to absolutely change yourself in 6 months? I think it's a good note to end it on.
To absolutely change yourself, I would say 1,
for the better.
You have to be willing to accept help for whatever you want, and have mentors, have some type of people that you look up to, and you like what they do, but you don't want to be them. You want to be your own self. So I think that's 1. Step 2, I would say, or another tip would be obviously find out who you are and stuff like that, but go all in. You know what I mean? Like give it 110%. If you want to be big, you got to put the work in. A lot of people want to have that status, but they don't want to put the groundwork in. And the groundwork for me was 50 DMs, 75 DMs a day, reaching out, taking phone calls, being complete. Like I didn't know how to talk on a phone in a sales way. So like I had to have that level of vulnerability, and I had to have that level of, the perception of failure needed to change. Like you're going to, like entrepreneurship is 99% failing. But the difference in failing is that failing isn't bad. You need to fail. Like I know Michael Jordan said something like this, but it was like, if you like he failed so many times, that's why he found success. Like whoever fails the most is going to find it. True. So I think when you get away from that, get out of your head, it's game over. And I think another tip would be, obviously go into it 100%, but patience. It takes time and gratitude, being grateful for the little stuff in my life, because I always sat here, and you're on social media, right? And everyone's on social media. You don't want to necessarily consume, but produce. So I was consuming, and I'm sitting here on my computer, on my phone, and I'm just judging everything I am. I'm looking at them. I'm like, oh, I want to look what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So I think once I shift my perspective to being grateful for, what I have in life, what, God has given me, what God has, allowed me to do, and the skills that He has blessed me with, that was one. But it was also, stuff takes time. It takes it might take a day, it might take a week, it might take a month, it might take 2 years, whatever. But if you're consistent throughout that, and that, one day you are going to get it, maybe not tomorrow, but you're going to get it one day, and you have that mindset that you truly believe it, you almost manifest it in a way that's like the law of attraction. And I can't even explain that because I believe that's so true.
Awesome. Wow. Well, I think that's a fantastic note to end it on.
Yeah, Nick. Thank you. Seriously. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
You, bro. It was awesome.
Yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Nick, where can people find you?
You could find me on my Instagram at Nick Massa, also TikTok. I also have a motivational page called at No Limit Dreamers, so that's another one.
Can you say it again?
And at No Limit Dreamers.
Okay, at No Limit Dreamers.
Got it.
Yeah, at No Limit Dreamers. That's my motivational page. My email is nickmassabusiness@gmail.com. So if you wanted to send me an email, I'd love to follow up with you guys. And also not even you guys, but the viewers and the listeners. If you have any questions from this podcast, stuff like that, I'd love to answer them.
Awesome. That's very kind of you. Nick, we'll put your links in the description for you guys, the viewers. And with that said, thank you so much for coming on. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.